where we stopped?
I don't know, I wasn't here last week.
Oh, you weren't there last week.
But the hadith was 272. That was the hadith I was going to read. So unless Dawud read that last week, it was a long hadith.
And then that's the one with Anas.
Hadith Anas, aywa.
Yeah, then that's the one with you. I think we're going to
We're
stop.
going to continue from that hadith, or
Yeah,
you explain that hadith?
No, we're going to start from there.
We're going to start from there.
Yeah, for the hadith of Anas.
طيب.
So read it and then we take it from there.
طيب.
Let me see.
هذا الباب تنبش قبور مشركين الجاهلية ويتخذوا مكانها مساجد. هذا هو.
أي.
هذا الباب صح؟
نعم.
طيب.
Where's
بسم الله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله. قال المؤلف رحمه الله chapter 33 in باب الصلاة, hadith number 272, narrated by Anas radiallahu anhu. When the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam arrived at Al-Madinah, he dismounted at the upper side of Al-Madinah amongst the tribe of Banu Amr bin Auf. He stayed there for 14 nights. Then he sent for Bani an-Najjar, and they came armed with their swords. As if I am looking just now, as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was sitting over his rahila, mount, with Abu Bakr riding behind him, and all Banu an-Najjar around him, till he dismounted at the courtyard of Abu Ayyub's house. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam loved to offer as-salah wherever the time of as-salah, the prayer, was due, even at the sheepfolds. Later on, he ordered that a mosque should be built. And sent for some people of Bani an-Najjar and said, O Bani an-Najjar, suggest to me the price of this walled piece of land of yours. They replied, no, by Allah, we do not demand its price except from Allah Ta'ala. Anas added, there were graves of pagans in it, and some of it were unleveled, and there were some date palm trees in it. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam ordered that the graves of the pagans be dug out, and the unleveled land be leveled, and the date palm trees to be cut down. So all of that was done. They aligned these cut date palm trees towards the Qibla of the mosque as a wall. And they also built 2 stone side walls of the mosque. His companions brought the stones while reciting some poetic verses. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was with them, and he kept on saying, there is no goodness except that of the hereafter. O Allah, so please forgive the Ansar and the Muhajir.
Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man sa'ara sabilihi ila yawmiddin, amma ba'd. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll be picking up from where we had stopped last week, where we start discussing this particular chapter. We'll mention the first hadith, the hadith of Aisha radiallahu anha, and that she narrated regarding what was seen by Habiba and also Salama radiallahu anhuma when they went to Al-Habasha, and they saw what they saw inside their Kanisa, inside of the churches, and how this impacted the people regarding taking people who have deceased, people who have died, as their places, as a place of worship. So the author, rahimahullah, he picked up and mentioned a second hadith in this chapter, where he mentioned the hadith of Anas bin Malik, where he mentioned the Prophet ﷺ al-Medina, where the Prophet ﷺ, that upon his arrival in Medina. So this concerning that when the Prophet ﷺ, that he made al-Hijrah from Mecca to Medina, so to relocate to al-Medina, that he stopped in a certain, so when he arrived in Medina, so then Medina wasn't per se named Medina, the name was eventually changed to Al-Medina, but then was called Al-Yathrib. So when he arrived in this city, this new place, that his arrival from the Ala al-Medina, from the highest point in Medina, and he arrived at a hay, at a particular region or particular part of the city, يقال له بنو عمر ibn Auf. So that area was referred to as such in that city. So the Prophet ﷺ, that when he arrived, he stayed there for 14 nights. They mentioned regarding concerning that in some narration of Ibn Asakir, that it mentioned 24. So they mentioned that what is more correct regarding how long he stayed in this particular area, it was 14 nights, even though you may have some riwayah that mention it was 24. But what is more correct, that as Ibn Hajar rahimahullah mentioned here, in this, that it is the correct amount of days that he stayed there was 14 days. They mentioned Layla, meaning days and night. Then I mentioned the Prophet ﷺ, that when he arrived in Bani Najjar, and Banu Najjar, that they are also like his paternal uncles. So the Prophet ﷺ, that his paternal uncles, that they are Bani Najjar. So he came to that particular area, and he was the people there that they welcomed the Prophet ﷺ, and also with him was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. So the one that was also accompanying the Prophet ﷺ through this journey was Abu Bakr as-Siddiq from the start, from the time that they left Mecca and they came to Medina. Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was the one who was his companion in this journey. So it shows one that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq was all that the relationship that they had, Abu Bakr had with the Prophet ﷺ, that you find that many of important matters that Abu Bakr will accompany the Prophet ﷺ. So it shows that relationship between both. And also the Prophet ﷺ, that during this journey, not undertaking the journey on his own, but also having a companion. So showing that a person taking a certain type of journey, especially those that can be said to be dangerous, that is preferable that one travel with a companion and not to travel on their own. Especially in long extended journey, it is better to be done with others rather than be done on one by oneself. Then I mentioned that he came to فَجَاهُ يَقَلِّدِي سُيُوفٍ. So that when the Prophet ﷺ, he was entering that the city, then the people, they came out and they greeted him, and by way of waving of their swords. So it's a way of during that time, and may still exist among some, that a way of greeting of others or welcoming someone, that they all use that with their swords as a sign of welcome. So we call today like the red carpet. Then they will use the waving of the sword as a way of greeting that person inside the city. Then I mentioned Annahu. Then the Prophet ﷺ, that with Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, then it mentioned that Abu Bakr وَحَوْلَهُ أَتَى أَلْخِيَ بِفَنَاءَ أَبِي أَيُّوبٍ. Then also he arrived at this place of Abu Ayyub, the courtyard of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. وَكَانَ يُحِبُّ أَنْ يُصَلِّي حَيْثُ أَدْرَكَهُ الصَّلَاةِ. Then I mentioned the Prophet ﷺ, when he arrived at the place of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari, that the Prophet ﷺ, that he liked to pray at the place that Salat Salat met him. So the place of the time of Salat came in, he would like to pray at that place. Bear in mind that the masjid was not existing then. So the masjid was now for a masjid existing then. So the Prophet, and also in Islam in general, that much masjid wasn't existing then. So the Prophet Islam, that he preferred to pray whenever the Salat caught him at a particular place, he would just pray at that place. Based upon what said, there's no masajid then that exist. So he would pray at this particular area or this house or courtyard of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, and also he prayed for Marabit al-Ghanam. That also he prayed in the area where the Ghanam, that they would sleep. Annahu. Then he mentioned that Annahu amara bibina al-masjid. Then the next thing that he instructed, so of those things that he immediately did, then to instruct regarding the building of a masjid. So the Prophet ﷺ, that when he arrived, as we'll know that he stayed for a while at the house of Abu Ayyub. So he stayed as a guest of Abu Ayyub, the place where his horse kind of somewhat stopped, or his his camel stopped. So of the things that he did was the first thing, make salat. So he showed the importance of salah. So of those first things the Prophet ﷺ did, that when he arrived in this new city, of those things of Medina, that he prayed. So made the salat, showing the importance of salah, and also it shows by that time that salat was somewhat established. That also the salat was established from that before then. Then of those things that he commanded was the establishment or the building of a masjid. So they showed the importance of having a masjid. So after said that a Muslim community, it is somewhat known by the masjid. So the hub, the heart of the community is the masjid. The hub and the heart of the community of the masjid. The masjid, so the Prophet ﷺ commanded, instructed that a masjid be built. A masjid be built. So find a Muslim community that if there's sufficient amount of people in that locality, of those things that should be looked into is establishing a masjid. Establishing a masjid based upon families that are there, that salat is to be established, and the ideal place for the salat is it to be done inside of the masjid. So it shows the importance of the masjid, and also establishing masajid at places that they are needed. I will use the word place that they are needed. Now, so I mentioned before of the things that we find today, that we have many masajid, at times places where they're not needed. Not that the masjid is not of importance, but not needed in the sense of it's not being used as it should. And there's not sufficient people around living local to the masjid to use the masjid as it should. So you find that so the masjid have a place. So masjid should be built at a place that is appropriate for the masjid to be built. We said it now. Bear in mind that of some of the problems that we find today, that especially in non-Muslim countries, that you find that a free-for-all, that somewhat the Muslim, they decide as to where the masjid are placed. And sometimes it is done for other than the right reason. So sometimes a masjid may not be built for the right reason. It is built more so that it creates division or a sign of division. So of those things that a masjid should not be built because of for the wrong reason. A masjid should not be established for the wrong reason, which is other than the reason that the masjid is to be established for, which is also those people establishing the masjid that they do it for the right reason and do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for ulterior reasons. Then it mentioned that فَبَنَى الْمَسَاجِدِ بَنَى الْمَسْجِدِ. So the first thing, even before instructing regarding his house being built, he built the masjid. So it shows the importance of the masjid. It shows the importance of the masjid based upon the type of service that the masjid carries and the masjid fulfill. Then I mentioned أرسل إلى ملأ من بني نجار فقال يا بني نجار ثامنوني بهايتكم. Then the Prophet ﷺ kind of somewhat then he send the message to the people of Bani Najjar, that was their region or their area that he was, that he requested that the masjid be sold to him, or the property. So he requested that the instruction to build a masjid, or the idea to build a masjid, but also it requires certain things to be put in place. So of those things in building the masjid, establishing the masjid, that first the land to be acquired for building the masjid. The land then was owned by others. The land was the property of others. So the Prophet ﷺ that he wanted to purchase that land from those who owned the land. So it shows concern that that in certain type of things that the Prophet ﷺ wasn't of those individuals always asking for said handouts, even building the masjid. That ideal that the masjid, if it needs to be purchased, if one wishes to donate the land, then that's not a problem as to be discussed. But also the intention is to buy the property if it is something that the Muslim can acquire by purchase. The Muslim is willing to pay for that property, and also it goes in the that the masjid becomes under the ownership of the community, not the individual, as we find today in many places. With me? So we find in many places that regarding the masajid in a Muslim country, that the masjid is not per se under the authority of the community, but it is in the responsibility. The system that we have is it's in the control of individuals, 5, 6, 7, 10, whatever the number is. And sometimes that it can be problematic. At times it can be problematic. Especially so the masjid should be under the auspices of the community. It may be registered in the name of particular individual, but not to be seen as their property. So the masjid not to be seen as those people, maybe it is registered under their name based upon the system that we are living in, that it is not to be seen as their property. Nam, so the Prophet ﷺ, that he instructed regarding bina al-masjid, so he showed the importance of the masjid, but also that the masjid, it fulfill the services expected from the masjid, and also used by the community as expected to be done within the masjid. Then the Prophet ﷺ, they mentioned that for the property to be sold, and I mentioned bihaytukum bustan, regarding concerning this property of yours, he wished to purchase this property. So show that a Muslim, not everything regarding that we're always asking for people to donate, not everything that we're asking for, that we're always soliciting people's or soliciting help unnecessarily. But at times, in building things that serve the community, that we have to maybe pay that so that thing can be done properly and be established properly. So at times you might find that the masjid and the Muslim services is done by way of voluntary service, which is good. But some service, it should be to ensure it is fulfilled properly. It is done by people who are qualified. And also, if it means paying for that thing, it is paid for. To ensure that thing is done properly. As time you have, when it comes to volunteers, that is upon their time, that may drag out the thing being done on the time that needs to be done. So is to have that balance. Some things, even the masajid, that they are paid for, so as it is done properly and within the time frame that is suitable. And some things can be done voluntary, but those things that are suitable for those type of things. So knowing those things that needs to be done, and it is done immediate and properly, and things that can be done voluntary service, what is suitable. So the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, فَقَالُوا Wallahi, so those people that he approached, that were the owners of the property, from Banu Najjar, that the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned to them, فَقَال, and also said that Banu Najjar was also people from his family. But he wasn't per se asking them to donate. So that the first thing, donate. First thing, sell this to me. I want to purchase this property from you. فَقَالُوا لَا وَاللَّهِ. So they said, La, we will not sell the property. And they said, Wallahi, by way of an oath, to emphasize that this thing, we will not sell it, even though the Prophet ﷺ proposed to them to buy the land from them. So he mentioned, Wallahi la. So not everything the Muslim that we like handouts. Now, sometimes with that mentality, that everything to be done as handout regarding things that serve the community, they think that we should pay for them. And also for the community, that everything that is done in the masjid, we should see it as that to overuse or misuse of the things in the masjid that are provided. Like even the ulama discuss regarding even the masjid, regarding the person who may charge his phone. He should seek permission from the masjid. The person who wishes to charge because you're taking a service from the masjid, that they have to pay for it. With me? I'm not talking about so as I said, in general, that certain type of stuff that the person has to be mindful regarding how things are used in the masjid, because it's just for the public, but there are certain things that one should ask permission, and if those those things are used, then a person he donate to that thing as a way of compensate to the masjid for that thing that may be used. Now, but you have sometimes the attitude that everything in the masjid is free. But to approach things different. Then he mentioned regarding concerning that that maybe so those people that he asked for them to pay for this, pay for the property, they refuse. They refuse to accept selling this property to the Prophet ﷺ. Then I mentioned la nutlub thamanahu, that we are not seeking it's to sell this property or anything from you regarding this piece of property illa Allah, except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning that they wish to donate it fi sabilillah. But said the first thing the Prophet ﷺ asked it to be to purchase it from them. But then they decided, the owners decided among themselves that they would give this free to the Prophet ﷺ, so as for the community, the community. Then I mentioned that la nutlub, that we're not seeking thamanahu illa ilallah, we're not seeking to sell this or any type of wage from this except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now also it shows regarding the Muslim, regarding things that benefit the Muslim, that at times the person willing to donate fi sabilillah and not seek anything of the dunya from it. So the person, yes, at times that they can donate to the masjid, their service, their skill to the masjid, then it's something which is that is something which is open, and people also that they should try to assist in the upkeeping of the masjid. That they should try to assist in the upkeeping of the masjid. Just like a side thing that with the masjid of the Prophet the Prophet masjid, that the person who used to clean the masjid. We know there's different ahkam that relate to the masjid regarding how we use the masjid and the upkeep of the masjid. That to the extent the Prophet masjid, it was being, the person who used to clean the masjid was a lady that was her own voluntary service, but is keeping the masjid to a certain standard regarding cleanliness and its level of upkeep. So that's upon the people who collectively, and more so as the community, and more so the duty upon those who are in charge, that they have to be, as they say, on point regarding these things. So those people have the responsibility, designated people who have responsibility regarding the upkeep of the masjid, then they have to be on point regarding that service, that duty that they have taken on. You with me? So if the person said, so they should be no concern if things that needs to be repaired, they know, and as soon as they know, it is done, as soon as possible. So as I mentioned, a masjid that is kept to a certain standard and functioning to a certain degree, not left to rotten away. Now, so those people that I mentioned, so I said, and also for the community, that at times when we're able to offer our service and also voluntary service, if there's things that we can do, then we should go for it in doing so. Fi sabilillah, as they mention here, illa ilallah, except for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what we can do to help the masjid, then we should do so fi sabilillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فقال Anas, then Anas radiallahu anhu, they comment, and Anas, فكان فيه مات ما أقول لكم قبور مشركين. Then it mentioned the shahid from the hadith that also on this property that there was qubur al-mushrikeen. So the property that was being looked at to establish the masjid, that on that piece of property, so the Prophet of the first thing concerning the availability of the Prophet, so it's having a plan. So having a plan. So if those said the Prophet's idea and plan, as I said, foresight in the community, it needs a masjid. Then the next thing, where's the most suitable place to have the masjid? So also a plan for a masjid, it should be in a location that is accessible to the community, not in an isolated place. Sometimes I go to certain places and the masjid is away from everyone else. It's an isolated location, but it's a masjid there. So it's not fulfilling its full service. Especially to find that people who may donate in other countries of masajid, it's a want to build a masjid anywhere. So the masjid may not be built in a place that is accessible to the general community. So it's looking so off the plan, the where the masjid is located, its accessibility, and also in the location, it's also so that also to be factored in regarding building masajid and placing masajid. And also there's a need. And also there's a need where you find Muslim living around or living in that neighborhood or living in that area. So having a plan regarding the masjid, so it can fulfill its purpose and objective. So I mentioned that of the property that was being looked at is that it has qubur al-mushrikeen. It has the graves of the mushrikeen. So they mention وَفِيهِ خَرَب وَفِيهِ النَّخْلُ. So it have different things. Runes. Also it have things regarding nakhl, date trees, date palm trees that are there. Then the Prophet ﷺ then instructed for Amara. So it shows that there was an agreement regarding when he proposed to purchase that property, and those people, they refused, and I mean that refuse to take any form of contribution for the masjid, financial contribution, payment for the masjid. They decide to give it fi sabilillah. Now, to the the Prophet ﷺ represent the community. So if the Prophet ﷺ represent the community by way of the masjid under the state, under a structured body. That was said a lot of time the masajid, they're under what? The name of individuals. To some cases, you find a masjid that it becomes, when that owner or the person, when he dies, it becomes the inheritance for his kids. Because it wasn't on the name of what? The community. It's still a part of his private possession. And that's wrong. That's wrong. So you find that, so regarding concerning the masjid, regarding how it function, it should be clear guidelines regarding the people, and finding the people are more suitable. One person mentioned a lecture that he said that he was talking about the states. He was talking about these states, and that may be applied to other places. That most of the masajid in the states, they were saying in the states, I would say that could expand, that the ones who run the masajid are common Muslim. The ones, if you go to the masajid, the people who run the masajid, meaning run the masjid, responsible, administer the masajid, most of the bulk of the people who run the masajid, they're a common Muslim. Don't understand much about what is concerning details of running a masjid. And also that could be expanded to other places. So it says now that so the masjid should be run by people who understand that duty of what is expected, and they know very well how to carry through on those things. They understand those things. So the masjid can flourish and fulfill its objective. Then he mentioned, so after the thing that the masjid, the piece of land that was to be the land that was to be purchased, then those individuals own the property that they want the land to be, that they donated it free for the Muslim, fi sabilillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it said that the person who donates a property, fi sabilillah, then that should be, for the Muslim, that should be the intent, fi sabilillah. So not in fi sabilillah, that you don't have a restriction when the masjid is established or that organization. Also, that the person, it is not a requirement, I'm going to give you this, then the masjid has to be named after me. Or I have to have a position in it. So you have all these stipulations. I would donate the property, but then the masjid, it has to be named after me. Or I have to choose the name. I decide who runs the masjid. Who's the Imam? Who is this? Who is that? So without those stipulations, fi sabilillah, you give it to the community that they would designate, identify individual who are qualified, or know enough to manage the masjid, and khalas. Khalas. If it is fi sabilillah. So the person who fi sabilillah, that you ensure the people that are going to oversee the masjid, the main thing that they know what they're doing. You put people who know what they're doing and can carry out those things properly. Then I mentioned that the property of the masjid, that it had certain things. One, qubur al-mushrikeen, so that the Muslims. Second, kharib, things of ruins, things were there, and also fihi nakhlun, and also things of some trees, date palm trees that was on the property. So the Prophet that I mentioned, فَأَمْرَ عَلَيْهِ السَّلَامِ بِقُبُورِ الْمُشْرِكِينَ نُبِشَتْ. That also that he instructed and commanded that the graves of the mushrikeen to be excavated, what's the word? To be digged up. And they mentioned that the graves in the sense of the bones. So those, the bones that were there, because the body have then rotten, then the bones that remain, then that is what is to be removed. Of the ulama mentioned that you have to dig up with the dirt and everything. But I mentioned that the main thing is the bones of the body. So as for the dirt, as to go with this, you have to be a dig all with everything, then that's not necessarily the case. So the main thing is that the bones that they are removed, and then if those things are removed, so of the thing that the shahid from the hadith, that the bones of the mushrikeen, that they are removed. So from this they mentioned that the permissibility of a graveyard after removing of the bones, that can be used to establish a masjid can be built over it. So contrary to what we mentioned last week, that a masjid cannot be built on a grave. So for a masjid to be built, then whatever remains of that deceased has to be removed. Has to be removed. So that was of the thing that the Prophet ﷺ instructed. So they mentioned regarding concerning min bab al-maslaha, then that can be done. And from the mushrikeen, that their graves can be, if there's a maslaha, a benefit, regarding, in this case, building a masjid in that location, then that can be done. Or things that may be of great benefit to the Muslim, then that can be considered, of their graves being removed. So that's concerned, they discussed the next matter, that's concerned the mushrik. About the case of the Muslim. If we have a graveyard of the Muslim, and for example, that where the graveyard of the Muslim is located, they have a project, they want to widen the city, or a reason that they may need to use a portion of that the land of where the graveyard is. But it's Muslim that are buried there. What to be done? They mentioned that overall that the asl, the original ruling, that the graveyard of the Muslim should remain as it is. That's the asl. So it should not, no interference, or the body be dug up. It should remain as a graveyard. So for example in Medina, from that time it's still Medina, the graveyard. Haven't been moved, even though the city is expanding. So the asl, it remain unless there's a reason. So they mentioned that if there's a maslaha, but that maslaha will be decided, it comes by way of one under the state, that their responsibility. For example, they want to build, because there's a reason they need to build roads. But the graveyard is in the way. And they believe that they need to do so to remove it, then they are allowed. But they have to consult with ulama and also those in authority regarding the real benefit of doing so. If you cannot go around this, there's no other option. So if there's a maslaha, a genuine benefit or reason, then it can be done. So if there's a general benefit, reason, valid reason, then it could be done, but with consultation. That I mentioned that is done by way of the state, the authority. Not just 5 people, 10 people, a group is that we're gonna just dig up the graves and change it. Then that's not the case. It has to be done by the authorities and also with consultation with the people of ilm. With consultation with the people of ilm. Because the asl of it is what? Is not to be removed or touched. So for one to do so, that requires that there's a reason, a maslaha, as the Shaykh Al-Rajihi he mentioned, as Shaykh Al-Rajihi he discusses. Also it shows regarding the hadith that is building something said that when those were asked, or the Prophet ﷺ proposed to pay for the property, and they refuse. Now that because of the project was to build a masjid, which is a religious emblem, building. Now of the things that discussed between the ulama, taking money for religious things. Taking money for religious things. So the Prophet ﷺ proposed to pay. So I show that at times, even for things that serve the community and as a religious purpose or fully religious intent or purpose, then at times you can pay for that service. But they discussed that, so a person, but in this case those people refuse the payment and they opt to do so fi sabilillah. So also for the person, like I said, for the Muslim, and especially concerned with talib al-ilm, regarding things that is benefit the Muslim, not everything need to be charged. And we say this based upon, you'll find that after Islam they discuss, for example, that, and especially become more common today, that giving a lecture in a masjid, people charging. Giving lecture in a masjid, people charging. Where when people charge, you have the scenario, a person give a lecture, I said, as the masjid and those in charge of the masjid, a person giving lecture in a masjid, then you should give them a form of, what is the word I'm trying to find, compensation, because they may have to travel, especially travel far distance, give you time, so you can give them some form of a gift. And the masjid should be mindful of this. And especially knowing the person's situation, that giving a gift. That's giving a gift. With me? No. That's by way of but then you have cases now where as if the person giving the lecture, so the masjid giving a gift, then that's something else. Now, to compensate the person for that effort. Especially the person have to travel, the person will travel a far distance, so at least the masjid should cover those things. I believe so. With me or wrong?
No, some of the petrol expenses.
You believe when I say it's right or wrong regarding the masjid, compensate for those things. Yeah. Justifiable or not? Tawakkuf? The person traveling the person coming from Birmingham to London, for example, to give a lecture. So either he pay out his own pocket if he's able. That's no problem if he can do so, alhamdulillah. But you might find that a person giving lecture, the tullab, they may be themselves masakeen. Right?
No. Then you cover the petrol fee.
Say you agree with that?
I would cover the petrol fee and everything.
Okay, so I say you agree giving us some for compensation. Okay, so they will say the next case, so said labas in those scenarios. The next case now, that the person giving a lecture, he charge a fee. He, the talib, him charging. You sound strange? You understand? So for him to do a lecture, now I've talked to that he will say that, so he can somewhat being diplomatic. I use the word being diplomatic. So I have to miss a day, I have to travel. So there's like, I need a compensation. So he'll be one that can somewhat dictating. If he doesn't get it, he's not going to give that lecture. If he doesn't get something, so you have something that if he doesn't get something, he will not give that lecture. You with me? Then that's a different matter. Complete different matter. I've spoken to people who run certain masajid, whether out of the country or in the country, and they said the person charged, that the person said, okay, for me to come and give a lecture, for example, they are Imam somewhere else. So I said that's a day out for me, especially if I travel and from one city to another. So that's like a day travel. So he has travel expense and not just him driving. He has to be flown there. So that's travel expense. Plus also, wherever he goes, then he wants to stay overnight. Because they come for the day. So most of the lecture will be in the evening, isn't it? So he doesn't want to go back the same night. So overnight, and also you have to give him something in his pocket change. And also he wants to bring his wife because he's traveling. And if he's in the city, he wants a vehicle to move around. And people have told me that this is the package that comes with you inviting someone to give a lecture in your masjid.
Allahu Akbar.
And this means that, so, Allah mustan. That's all we can say, Allah mustan. But you have people, that's how they function. And they're said to be Tullabul Ilm. Said to be Tullabul Ilm. That's all I can do, laugh, isn't it? Because it's not real, but it is real. So I said, no, that different people, you understand, have a different approach. And they said that these are people who are said to be, the person who said that people said, our people are said to be, they communicate the message of the Sunnah. But they charge. They charge people to give lectures. For you to have them, then you have to pay them to give that lecture. If you cannot fulfill that, what they stipulate, then they're not going to come. If you give them the minimum, as you said, cover expense, give a little change, if you can't have that, they're not going to come. So, Allah mustan. But that's the hal that we are in today. So it says not the matter regarding concern is not the person charging, that is for the talib regarding teaching the people. Then let's be mindful of this. To be mindful regarding of those exuberant fees or charges that's somewhat unnecessary. And most of the masajid, they go to a masjid al-masakeen themselves. The masjid itself is miskeen. The masjid itself is miskeen. Is, you understand, unable to, you understand, they themselves, need help. But for you to be there, then you have to, you understand, you have these demands regarding things that have to be in place for you to go and give a lecture. And this is real. This is real. That cases, to show the extent that the cases, things have occurred, the things that occur, that a person came to give a lecture, is a person, you have cases where the person, the designated for them to give a lecture, something changed. Something happened where that day that the lecture was planned for them to give the lecture, that something occurred where they were unable to, the master was unable to facilitate them. With me? So the person who comes to give a lecture on a particular Friday night to give a lecture, something happened where they're unable to facilitate that person, or certain things change. So the person unable to give a lecture, but that person still want whatever amount that was agreed upon, or a portion of what was agreed upon. He's not going to give a lecture, but he still want to be compensated. Because we already had that agreement. These things occur by people who are said to be Tullabul Ilm. So it becomes a matter concerning tijara. That's tijara. So it says that as for the Salaf, that was that even concerns most of the people who go overseas and study, from the Tullab who go overseas and study, I can speak of the ones of certain places, like for that in some places to go overseas and study, that the person may go in an established institution, right? What you may need in some of those places is for you to just be there and pay a minimum things regarding your accommodation. But as for lessons, there's no fee for the lessons. But you just maybe pay something. They might provide accommodation. So they might charge, so you pay something for accommodation, but as for lessons, those are free. So you pay for maybe for you to go there, your ticket to go there and to come back whenever you want to come back. So that's minimal fee that you will pay. But as for the lessons, that's free. Other places, institution that they may give you like a package, like a scholarship, where they cover everything. Your fee to get there and to come back. While you're there, they will give you some form of stipend. So everything is covered. You just need to be there. You just need to be there. But everything is covered. accommodation, stipend, your books, everything is there. So everything you receive is free. Nam? Then the person who received this, then you're going to come back to your country to give da'wah support, and then you're going to charge the people when what you received was free of no effort other than attending lessons. And you're going to charge people exuberant fees to teach them what you receive free. You understand? So what was your intention in going? And something intention going there may be right. You have the correct, but then something change after. Because sometimes a person might start something with a good intention, but then things might circumstances might change where their intention change after. Now become the sheikh. Now you have to pay me. As a student, everything balash, free. But now I'm the sheikh. Then you have to pay me for my service. So I said, now the person who going as a talib, you must have certain rules for yourself. And of that, not to, I don't want the word that I'm thinking, I don't want to use the word that I'm thinking, but said, no, that does be mindful regarding, you use it as a tijara. It becomes a business. It becomes a business. So said to know that in this concern, the lesson, the main lesson is that the talib, you understand, is the person always focused regarding concerning serving your community in ilm, in donating of things, that your intention is clear from start to the end. If you say fi sabilillah, that be the case from the start through to the end, from A to Z. Make it be fi sabilillah. Especially regarding things regarding ilm and the likes. Then I mentioned the Prophet ﷺ that those things were clear from the masjid, from the property, and then eventually the masjid, it was built. So after said, so it shows regarding the permissibility of removing the graveyard and it being used as a masjid. Sheikh. So that inshallah ta'ala will end for today. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهذه السبيل.